Very warm welcome to today's episode of Champagne Circus, Business with a Female Twist. And honestly, it's such an exciting episode for me because I'm so honored to have a very special guest today. I'm a big fangirl of her. She's doing such an amazing work. She's such a role model to entrepreneurs for a business you love living and a business which is really a gift and an addition to your life. Besides doing work, which is super important to all of us, which is around intimacy. And honestly, the vibe, the name, everything around her is just magic. So I'm super, super grateful and happy for having you on this episode today. Welcome, Dr. Kimberly Rose Pendleton. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so thrilled to be here.
What I love to do usually is giving a little introduction. So as I said, I'm a fangirl. I know already quite a bit about you, and I'm sure we're gonna sparkle it in. And there's one question I always had in my mind because I couldn't figure it out yet. The PhD, like history-wise, which PhD are you actually holding? Maybe that's a good introduction to yourself, who you are.
I love that question. And it's good for me to realize, like, I should probably talk about that more. But I did my PhD in women's studies. And so my focus was on sexual trauma and religion. And we were just talking about this before we started recording. But, looking back, it now seems like, oh, that makes so much sense that body of work, looking at women around the world and like, what do we need to be empowered, and what impact does trauma have on us? What impact does religion have on sexuality? All these themes that are now such core parts of my business and my brand. But it wasn't on purpose. I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I was going to be a professor. And actually, before I launched Uncover, my business, I had accepted a job teaching American religious history from the post-war to Reconstruction at a little college. And I thought that was going to be my life. I was expecting to be an academic, and I definitely was not expecting to be, posting pictures of myself in lingerie on the internet and going to Paris on business trips and teaching about pleasure. But it's been the most wonderful mix of kind of everywhere I've been. And now I can't think of any better training, even though at the time, of course, my advisors were like, what is she doing? We've lost her. Gone over the deep end.
Oh, that's so beautiful and so honest. Thank you for that, for really opening that space that way.
Totally.
Because what I feel like your Instagram, your social media is such a vibe. As I mentioned before, it's this very intimate, this Paris vibe, so beautiful. And I cannot say if it's just the words or if it's the pictures or if it's the honesty or if it's the level of reflection in it. It's just beautiful. And this is one of the free containers, right? This is just the entry door to your world. Yeah. And it's already so powerful. So can you, what we would love to discover is not only, well, let me start it differently. What I really found magical and surprising in the same way is you are not doing only this beautiful artwork on social media as a free entry door, I would say. You're also an author. You're also giving speeches, and you're delivering powerhouses of programs. And with that, you have built a multi-figure business, right? A 7-figure business. So you're a CEO, a founder, a brilliant coach, an artist, in your words, in your pictures. It's amazing. And I am really curious how you end up doing, what was your pathway? Because from the outside now, it's like, as I said, I'm a fangirl. It looks just outstanding. And you're so so personal. You're so honest. You're so, like you could be my best friend here, having just a glass of wine
Totally.
or non-alcoholic wine. So how was your journey from, I think I'm gonna be an academic to, oh my God, I'm running a seven-figure business and soon I'm a seven-figure business mompreneur even, right? So how did
Yes.
that happen?
I first just want to really thank you for seeing me. Everything you've just reflected is like my deepest desire for the business and how it would feel first and connections like ours are the best part of doing this, especially doing it online. I feel like now I have this global network of friends that
Mhm.
I would never have met. It's so moving and it feels incredible to think like, oh, well, now I've got Yvonne in Berlin and now I've got, there's just like such a feeling of abundance. Like we're all in this together. But so anyway, so thank you. I'm like really like taking that reflection in. And, one of my favorite things about what you just said, and that I really strive to maintain in my work, is that sense of it getting to feel like a work of art. Like, I think that that is such a piece of the puzzle of keeping business feeling really pleasurable, which I know is a huge value of yours. It's a huge value of mine too, that champagne circus energy of it, where it's not necessarily that we're saying it's easy. It's still deep work, devoted work you kind of bare your soul for, which can be hard in a way. But it's like, how do we keep it feeling magical and feeling like art and feeling like I can't wait to get back to this. And so for me, there's some like practical pieces to that answer. And then I think some energetic pieces too. But I would say on a practical note, the first thing that I really noticed was how different it felt to have colleagues and have mentors so that I wasn't doing it by myself. And I think like we can do it by ourselves, I think that that's still possible, but I think for me personally it would have been a lot slower. Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's like, I think I would have gotten so caught up in my own doubt and my own insecurity and like, can I do this? Am I allowed to do
Mhm.
this? I don't know anyone else doing this. So to have, I joined my first coaching programs like pretty early and took some coaching trainings and, joined a mastermind maybe before other people would have said it's a good idea. I mean, I was just like, I have student loan money and a credit card. Like, I'm just going to try this. And I kind of had an intuitive sense that sisterhood around me and someone or multiple someones who've done it, kind of guiding me, were going to really help. And I think that that helped me just not lose momentum. Like it was still me and, it's still us as we do the work. But when there are other people around you, kind of like, okay, cheering you on, you can do it. And when I come in being like, you guys, am I making this up? Am I crazy? Would anybody ever want this? To have a chorus of like other women who are like, yes, this is important. Yes, the world needs this. I look back and think that, especially in those early years, that was really pivotal, I think. And then, kind of along the same lines, I feel like I found some collaboration energy that made it feel very artistic. So, like the first time I did a photo shoot, I remember thinking, like, oh, this feels like we're making art. Like I'm
Mhm.
choosing what to wear and where to be, but there's so much more than that. And I had an amazing photographer who I still work with, Wendy Yalom, who I really recommend. She travels all over the world. but she brings that out anyway. But I think we could bring it to any photographer, any graphic designer, any kind of piece of the business where it's like, oh, I'm not just doing this to check off the box. How can I like breathe life into this? Like, what am I creating? Almost like this is my blank canvas and my paintbrush. And, I think things like that have really helped it feel like I'm not just teaching and I'm not just creating, I'm making art. And that has felt really fun.
Amazing. And I can totally relate to that. So I did
Really?
do
Yes.
normal photo shoots and the
Yeah.
artistic ones, and those changed everything.
Yes.
What I'm curious about, I think your brand Uncover is already like you started in 2018, is it correct? Like quite a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
And there are two questions questions which came to my mind. First of all, did you start immediately in online coaching?
Oh, that's such a good question. So, no, not really. There was a brief period, maybe even before Uncover technically started in 2017, which was the year I finished my PhD. I had a little art collective in my city. I was in Washington, D.C., and they let me teach vision board workshops. And so that was kind of the very beginning. I mean, it's quite different in some ways, but quite similar in other
Yeah.
ways. And I just had always liked them myself. I'm looking at one right now, like that I've made, it always inspired me. And I thought like, well, we'll see, in Washington, D.C., for anyone who doesn't know that city, which I love that city, but it's like a little uptight. I'm from California, like I'm from the kind of land of the hippies. And so like I felt like I was bringing that a little with me. Like most of the people who would come to these workshops worked in politics. They were very like driven women. And this was like the first time they had seen a table set with like magazines and glitter glue and scissors and wine. It was so funny, but it was so
Oh.
fun. And it slowly, I mean, it's so funny to think back actually, because I sold the first tickets for $7. And sometimes I think like, wow, $7 to seven figures. Like what a journey this has been. I mean,
Wow.
I wasn't even covering the cost of the wine. I was just like, I don't know. It feels so crazy to get paid anything. I've done so much work on that, and I'm sure so many people can relate. But it sparked something because we were
Mhm.
getting deeper into the questions of like, but what do you really want? And then the coaching actually kind of came out of that because they would map out these desires. And then there was part of me that wanted to help them get them. It was like, well, what now? Now you're just going to like go off into the night and like good luck with it all. But so I started setting up like, well, if you want to meet back up with me, we can talk about making your vision board a reality. And it's interesting because, once I learned more about online coaching and just like the freedom of being able to see people anywhere, and I took more of my own trainings, it became so enticing. I really stopped doing in-person work, but I mean, except for like retreats and VIP days, but that same framework is kind of still present of like, okay, what would you want? And how do we get it for you? And it's in a way so simple, but also for so many women in particular, I find those are some of the harder questions. Like, especially the what do I even let myself desire? So, anyway, it's
Mhm.
funny to think about kind of it all stemming back to me showing up around the city with like this pile of magazines and being like, let's make a mess and like, let's make magic.
Oh, I can feel it. I can feel it. And I can really see myself in this group of people. You the dreamy one, the artistic one in this more
Yeah.
rational setting, having a glass of wine and,
Yes.
doing the artistic stuff on the vision board. That's so beautiful. And $7 to seven figure is such an analogy. So
Crazy.
the second question which came to my mind was, you just mentioned you started immediately with people who are already where you want to be and
Mm.
working with mentors. And a lot of people, or especially a lot of women, also in business, feel like, ooh, I need to learn this. I need to hone my skills on here. Another technique on this for coaching, for running an online business, for marketing, for whatever. And then you also mentioned there's an energetic side. So when you go back in your memories in regards to the people you worked with from the very beginning, was it more on honing your skills, especially probably in online business and coaching, or was it energetic? Was it a mixture? So what was your key to success in working with people and selecting them? What have you been focusing on?
I love that question, especially because if you had asked me at the time, I would have given you a different answer, I think. I think I
Oh.
thought what I was doing was learning skills. I had a story. I don't know how to coach because I've never coached. So I better go
Mhm.
learn to coach. And I'm like, teach me to do this. I was such a student in such a frame of mind of like, okay, I must like follow the steps. But looking back, I think what really impacted me the most was getting to be kind of face to face with proof of what was possible.
Mhm.
So if I was learning from someone or some mastermind sister of mine was popping up and, excuse me, they had just had this amazing thing happen, or they had run a VIP day, or they had booked a client, I didn't know yet what an impact that was having on me, like on my spirit. But I look back now and think that was giving me permission to dream differently and to think of myself as someone who could do that too. And so I signed up for the skills, and the skills were great, but the energy, I think, was really what was making the most difference. Because the truth is, there are some coaching skills that I think are really important, but so much of it is about how we show up, in my experience, how we show up and how we are present. It's not like, I think at the very beginning, I worried, like, well, what if I don't know the right thing to say? And now I would say, like, oh, it's not about that. You're not trying to say the right thing. It's not really about you at all. It's about them. But how we hold it and how we show up is so huge. And so I look back now and think, oh, yeah, I was seeking out people who would give me permission to imagine like the life that I actually wanted. And now I think of it as, let me find whoever's doing it the way I want to do it and get as close as I can to them. So, like you mentioned, I'm currently pregnant, and I'm noticing I'm doing the same thing around motherhood and
Mhm.
entrepreneurship, just kind of looking around and seeing like, okay, like who is my proof that this can still happen, that this could be even better than before? Like, can I follow them? Can I get as close as I can? Like, can I rub up against this energy of possibility? And I think for all of us, that's so important, but especially if we're embarking on new territory, like if you're the one in your family breaking a pattern around not having enough money, or if you're the one in your group of friends breaking the kind of norm of having an amazing relationship. And like, I think in this case, I feel that around motherhood too, where it's like, I grew up in this society that feels like it gave me this narrative that you could either be a good mom or you could be good at your work, but you really couldn't be both. And so I'm like, okay, let me get out of that and like find the women who are proof that that's not the binary we need to be in, and that, that there's a way to do it. And so I'm like, sure, if they have skills and practical tips, I'll take it. But it's really more about you already believe what I want to believe and you live a way I'd love to live. How do I just like saddle up to you and ride next to you?
That's so beautiful and so important. And basically that's reinforcing my idea and the mission of this podcast, right? To feature those role models, to make it more transparent. Because one of the things I totally believe is that our own business, that really becoming an entrepreneur as a woman is the best opportunity to create a different way of living, it's serving our lives, right? And not only ours, also we are building a company means we are getting an employer. So we are building a different environment for a woman who's not probably bold enough or encouraged enough or, feels more safe or more happy in being an employee, which is perfect. And it's this ripple effect we experience with our business, and you just beautifully put words into that, because you, like I said, it's a love declaration to your business, which is serving your life. So you summarized everything your business enabled you to do. Your partner, your husband, has been on sabbatical to find his profession. Having the time for the baby coming and really exploring that further. Now you're a team member where you are gifting her also a trip, right? Not work related. If she wants to do it, fine. So all those opportunities arising. And really showcasing that, because nobody, like, we grew up with so many white men running a business, and it's so important that we role model that so everyone can find her energetic match to lean into it and tap into it to tap into their power.
I have chills hearing you say that. Honestly, I think there's something so powerful about the truth of that we don't even know what's possible in feminine leadership because we're creating it still. But I look around at the role models we have inherited from the way that things have been run for 50, 100 years. And I just think we would do it differently. We do it differently, that like taking care of, yes, still a life of pleasure. For me, I'm still overflowing with like so much amazingness in my life, but I'm taking care of my employees. I'm taking care of my family and my people. Like money is getting redistributed everywhere that it needs to go, and it's making life better for everyone. And I just could see the more and more of us who are leading the economy, like the more normal that got to be. Like, what if being a business owner meant overflowing generosity and like a life of pleasure for us and everyone, rather than, like so much of what we see, especially where I am in the States, is like what feels to me like scarcity for these really high net worth men who are running these companies and their employees are getting paid so little, and the resources they're using up are maybe harming the earth. And it feels very like, I'm afraid, like, let me gather all the money, like, let me just build this like castle and hide behind all my money. And when I look at women who I admire, who are running businesses, it's like, this benefits me, this benefits you, this is for my children, I'm pouring into my community, I'm like the fountain, like overflowing. And I really think that that's possible if we put more in the hands of women. If I'm being really honest. And obviously there are so many men too who want this new paradigm, and they're our partners, and I'm so grateful for them. But I do think economically, and in terms of like who a CEO is, like it gets to be us.
That's pretty interesting, like who you are as a CEO. That's pretty interesting. So if you would define your CEO identity, or if you uncover it a little bit, like what is the difference you see between you as the female CEO towards others? We can only assume here.
Mhm.
And and how, like, what are your probably your beliefs or your, you know, habits of pleasure would you put into place for you being the female CEO the way you are, which is changing the paradigm and resulting into running a seven-figure business?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that question. I mean, I think one thing that comes to mind is the way that power circulates for me and so many of my colleagues and mentors. It's like not as dependent on a hierarchy. Like, yes, I'm, running the business and I am the main coach. So there are some things only I can do and decide. But like the way that my team feels and what their opinions are really matter to me. And if my clients have feedback or someone wants something, an idea comes, I just feel very grateful for input and grateful for that maybe more collaborative way of gathering information. And it doesn't feel like a threat. Nothing
Mhm.
feels like a threat. I think that's actually one like core difference, this is maybe going even further into that same dynamic, but sometimes I get asked by people, because I teach an Uncover Coach certification where I basically like teach my methodology and the way that I've built this business to anybody who wants to learn it. And sometimes people have been like, aren't you worried that that's going to mean you have all this competition? And like, what if, aren't they like going to steal your clients? Isn't that a bad idea for your business? And I mean, I understand that fear, of course, but I just land in a place of like, that scarcity fear is not the truth, I mean, there is so much to go around. Unfortunately, there's so many people who need our help. So we're not running out, of women who could use empowerment. Like that would be a
Mhm.
great problem to have if we were like, actually, we're done. The whole world is healed. We'll be like, great, I'll go learn to sell flowers or something instead. But, just that feeling of like, we all have our own unique flavor. There's nothing dangerous about me sharing everything I know with someone because there are going to be people who, they can't hear it from me, but maybe they could hear it from you. And so if I've passed on everything and it mixes with everything that you're bringing from your background, we're able to like both rise and have like our genius in its separate forms come together and make something even better and make something new. And it's just so different from this energy of like, let me hide, let me protect, let me be afraid. I don't want to share. And I think all of us, or well, who knows for anyone else, but for me, like that had to be a conscious choice. And it took
Mhm.
some work for me, because I did feel like scared, but I just kept coming back to like, well, what do I really believe? And like, what do I really stand for? There's enough to go around and we rise together. And it's my greatest honor to be generous with everything that I've figured out. And if I can save someone some steps and maybe like some expensive mistakes that I've made, because there are many, what a gift. And we can just be in that feedback loop of like helping each other grow. And that to me really does feel like kind of a new paradigm of leadership.
I can totally relate to that. And thank you so much for being honest here, that it
Mm.
took you a while and it took you
Mm.
some work to get to that place. So, me, I'm coming from a corporate background. I was not lucky enough to to start immediately with those energetic mentors, but with more like usual corporate
Totally
driven,
tactical.
tactical, male, energetic, this is how you do it energies.
Yeah.
And I really, really had to unlearn it and learn collaboration, right? Because collaboration requires a different state of mind and a different peace with yourself, with your own personality, with your strengths, and also believe in yourself, right? In order to really collaborate and meet on an eye to eye level. And I also feel like this is never ending. So it's, as you mentioned, unfortunately, there's so much work to do around scarcity, around fear, around, like, in various nuances and levels and
Yeah.
contexts.
Yes.
So it never stops, not even for us, right? So there's enough to do, I would say.
Plenty. No, you're so right.
So what I really love, like as mentioned before, you are a PhD, but you are rising others as well to become a PhD because you have your own PhD certification, which is around pleasure, healing, and desire. And you use those words quite a lot during our conversation. So I think that's such a unique framework. And now I'm bringing in also the intimacy
Yes.
coaching or the intimacy incubator here. So I have a lot of like pictures in my mind, especially you put in some specific pictures in your marketing, in your positioning, as you said, like now you're calling out of your bedroom. This is intimate. You have like
Yeah.
very intimate photo shoots wearing boudoir stuff. And this is a
Right.
vibe. And it to me, it feels like it requires some courage to do so. And it's a very specific positioning. So I'm curious about this whole context or this, let me call it angle of approach for healing through intimacy. How does like, what is it about? Like, if you put it
Yeah.
in your words, the intimacy and your own PhD,
Yes.
what is it you're actually doing and what is
Yeah.
the woman getting out from it? What kind of liberation
Yeah.
does she get through your services, through your products?
Yeah, like what is going on in there? I would say, first of all, thank you. Like, what a generous question just to have a chance to like lay it all out on the table. And it took me some years to figure out like what is the framework that I really think is going to produce the best results for us, because I had this inkling and it turned out to be right. So that's always fun. But, over the years and now with like so many testimonials and so many clients who've gone through it, I'm like, oh, okay, we were really onto something. But this inkling that intimacy was so much bigger than just what we've been taught, that maybe so many of us inherit a definition that's maybe purely physical or just about sexuality. And of course, that's a piece of it. But I had this feeling that there was like vulnerability and a willingness to be brave, like you said, and a kind of curiosity around like a life of pleasure and delight, but also that like a lot of deep healing would have to go with that if you were going to feel safe enough to open up, safe enough to be vulnerable. So, what kind of intimacy healing was needed, especially if we do have trauma in our background or heartbreak or, clients recovering from something where they didn't feel safe. And so there were like all these little pieces, and it was like, how does it all go together? What do we want? What do we need? Like, okay, the intimacy incubator came together in 2020. And now this pathway has formed for me that starts with healing and moves into self love and then moves into relationships. And so it's kind of like all the pieces of the puzzle that I was noticing we needed and that I had needed, but you couldn't really do one without the other. I mean, you could, but it didn't really work as well. Like I found that if I was just trying to do the relationship work, but I didn't tend to any of the healing and I skipped all the self-love, it put all this pressure on the relationship. But if I only did the healing, it was like, well, what now? Like, I want to go be with someone or I want to go live my life. And so, anyway, this pathway, and this is kind of the like little chart through the intimacy incubator, which is a year-long journey, is what I now call your PhD, because it's this degree in your pleasure, in your healing, and your desire. It's 8 courses through the year and coaching with me. And it goes through basically what felt like all of those steps. And then there's some fun stuff in there too, like the Paris program, like like we've been talking about that through line of like pleasure, permission. So there's some fun, pieces that, and then there's some deep work pieces around healing and some courses on, how do you be with a partner? How about while you're growing your own business? Like what happens to your relationship? Like that piece. And then at the end, and I've just been celebrating some of these, so it's so fun. I consider you getting your doctorate when you finish all the courses, and I throw you a little dinner party. So I just got pictures back from one of my clients who just finished her PhD, and she and her soon-to-be husband had gone to their favorite restaurant, and I had set it up for them and sent a gift card. This is all so influenced by, we both share a mentor, Melanie. I feel like she really has taught me just how fun those little but big things can be. Like I remember her sending me, money to go buy champagne the first year I hit $1 million. And it's like, oh, just those little gifts from your mentor can be so fun. And so, yeah, so people finish their PhDs, get their doctorate, and officially have their pleasure, healing, and desire degree. And I think it did feel, like kind of a cheeky nod to my academic work where pleasure, healing, and desire are completely missing. Like that is not the purpose of the traditional PhD. But also I did want to honor, like, this is a lot of work, I mean, it's fun and it's so life-changing, but it's not nothing. And there are temptations, I think, to skip it. Like, if I'm being really honest, I think that clients look at my stuff and sometimes think like, that seems intense. Like, I'm not sure I want to just yet. Or I get a lot of messages like, I know I need this, but I'm feeling kind of scared. And so this was also, I thought, a fun way to like bribe ourselves. Like, all right, if I do it all, I get the party at the end. And that can be really fun. And I think just a good way to really live out our philosophy of like mixing pleasure with the whole process. Like we're so much more likely to keep going if it's also fun. And it's like, okay, I'm going to sit down with this healing course, but I'm going to do it in my like soft robe with my candle burning and my favorite mug with tea, so that my nervous system is open and I can like relax into it. And so I think that, I mean, my hope is that at the end, women leave feeling just so much more like themselves, like they've been able to do the healing and get into the self-love and feeling just so alive and vibrant. And because of that work, their relationships are just incredible. And then there's some bonuses I put in there about behind the scenes of my own business, just for anyone who's an entrepreneur who joins. Because it can be fun to see, like, well, how did you do this? And how do you keep intimacy as you grow? So I call it the business minor that you can like also get if you want.
And it's so incredible because from the outside, you can drop in like with one program, or you can commit
Right.
to the year, as you said, and
Right.
you can even become a coach. So you can create a business out of it. So it's so beautiful, and it looks like, oh, easy peasy. Yeah, right. It totally makes sense. And you
Yeah.
sparkled in all the time, like during our conversation today, that it evolved over time. So
Yeah.
if we take some minutes on the journey from, okay, I
Ah,
finished my PhD, to,
yeah.
okay, now I'm running a 7-figure business
Yeah.
with this perfectly, beautifully aligned, awesome product. Um, what have been the biggest, like, if you look back, what have been the biggest milestones or changes or mm, things to put into consider, like what's popping up, like what are the key
Yeah.
things lining up to where you are now? Because it always looks like, oh my god, that's so perfect,
Right.
this is what we need to
It's
get
like
to,
when
right? And
people
then we
finish
are freeze.
product.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I went kind of a traditional route, I think. I started with just one course, Uncover, which is now the first course in the PhD. And I taught it over and over. It was the beginning and it felt kind of like the backbone. But it was like one of those things where then it opened up new questions. So Uncover was, very focused on healing with pleasure. It's still the course that I would say, if someone wants to know where to start, it's such a good place to start. I go back to it. I'll like hit something in my life and be like, well, back to Uncover module 1 for me, just the process. It's so nourishing. But, people would take it and then be like, okay, I think I'm ready to go date. How do I flirt? And it would like help me spark that flirting course. And then it would be like, okay, the flirting went great. Now I have a boyfriend. How do I be in this relationship? And it was like, oh, right. I have even more to say about that. And so I feel like that was really, first it was just this 10-week course. And it took everything I had to be courageous enough to just launch it. The first time I launched it, 4 people signed up. That was it, and I just had to believe like eventually it
Mhm.
will be more, and kept going. And actually, one of those 4 people is the woman who just did the doctorate I was telling you about, and she's getting married next week. And it's just like so incredible to think about. She's been with me from the very beginning. She's
Oh my
seen it
god.
all. But it gave me that permission to evolve. And the evolution never to me felt like burning it down and starting over. I have some friends who like that's more their personality and they like that energy. So there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, it felt like I was just always like branching off and like building it. So first it was just Uncover, and then some of the other courses came, and then the incubator kind of like tied it all together. And now it feels crystal clear to me, but it didn't, for a long time. I was just asking for like, what is that right next step, from God, from the universe, from my higher self. But there's one thing I want to add in, kind of related to that, that has really served me. And I think that a lot of my clients do this too now in a way that really serves them, which is I would ask my business. So it's not that helpful that I named everything the same thing, but there was Uncover the course and then Uncover the business. And I felt connected to like the soul of Uncover. I felt like this business chose me, and I can ask her too, what do you want me to do next? Like, what do you, yeah, right? It's
Chills.
just,
Yeah.
uh, it felt like we are co creating together. And something about that just really feels like it took pressure off of me. Like it's not just me figuring it out, but it also heightened the feeling of importance. It was like, I really think our creations choose us to come through, and they can only come out if we keep saying yes, you know, to it and to the work and to the relationship. And so that sense of like, I'm in devotion to this. How can I connect to like the spirit of my business and ask, like, what are you craving?
I've got chills all over my body because that's exactly the same experience I made with my business. So I funded it like I started it end of last year in the shape of it's now, female business scaling. And it felt immediately like an own identity. And then consciously, I created an own identity out of it, right? So I applied the identity work principles, which I use for myself, for my business. And now I'm co-creating with it. And it became so much easier. So this podcast is one of the results of it because I was thinking about a podcast for more than 2 years. And all of a sudden it was there in 8 weeks. Just because it was co-creating with the whole brand and the whole idea. So it's such a powerful, magical question. And I'm leaning into your energy. If you can make it, I can make it. Right. And if you can make it and I can make it, everyone else can make it. If you really have this, oh my God, this business is not only a business, that's an own identity I can co-create with. Thank you so much for sharing this magic, like miracle.
My pleasure. Honestly, it's such a game changer, isn't it? When you're not thinking, how do I figure it out? Which can be so hard, but more like, oh, what am I allowing to come through? Which can feel like, oh, my job is to open and receive and transmit and to be here and to stay. And that requires a different type of devotion, but it's not the like, let me just figure it out myself.
Oh my God. That's probably the most, how do you say that? Not the most important, but the most valuable business advice you can ever give. Or there were so many gold nuggets within that conversation. But if there's one really to remind, it's like this co-creation with your business and asking that, and the way you beautifully described the question to interact with it. Oh my God. Thank you so much for sharing this.
My absolute pleasure.
And I'm honestly very, very curious where you are heading to, like how you're evolving with the 7-figure mom, business owner and CEO, and how that also shapes in your incubator, because what I sensed, the incubator develops alongside your life, right? With all your experiences, with, becoming a wife and everything. And I'm really, really curious, what's the next level for that? Because I can really, I can really sense there is, even more wisdom coming through. And I'm so grateful for meeting you here today and our conversation. And beyond that, grateful for being allowed to be in your world through your beautiful artwork on social media, because it really feels like you are opening up there and you're leading the path. So thank you so much for our conversation, Kimberly.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It really filled my cup.
Same here. So thank you so much. And as mentioned before, you have to check out Kimberly on social media because it's just art. And we will share the links in the show notes. And there's also some free material, free courses, which are beautifully packed and high valuable content. So I can just recommend it. Fangirl moment again.
Please.
That's probably the best, right? So we put it all in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for opening up. You're really leading the way here. Thanks.
Thank you.
And all the best for little Rosie.
Thank you. Receiving.